Four-faced Buddha, or To My Shore. Chapter 1. You have deviated from the route. Bang! A rear-end collision occurred. When Shulang gradually regained his senses from the haze, the phone's GPS navigation system at his feet was still calmly announcing, "You have deviated from the route. Please make a U-turn at a safe location and replan your route." He unfastened his seatbelt and bent down to pick up his cell phone. The stretch in his body caused a dull ache in his chest. Pressing lightly over his ribs with his hand, he judged the injury wasn't serious. Pushing open the car door, he stepped out. The cool morning breeze rushed in to greet him. Shulang looked toward the car he had rear-ended. His gaze paused slightly, brows knitting just a little. Great, it had to be a luxury car. With his long legs, he strode toward the vehicle. Along the way, his eyes swept briefly over the detached bumper and the dented rear of the car. Inwardly, he quickly assessed whether his auto insurance would be enough to cover damages to such a luxury car. He had always been someone with steady emotions, but even he felt a flicker of irritation. Still, the fault was his. There was no one else to blame. By the time he took those few steps forward, he had already played out the worst-case scenario in his mind and come up with a rough plan of action, how to deal with this situation. Reaching the driver's side window, Shulang gently knocked on the glass. The deeply tinted windows blocked all view inside. Morning light spilled across the surface, but instead of offering clarity, it refracted cold and sharp, slicing through the air and through the apology in Shulang's eyes. The window didn't roll down right away. The 180-centimeter tall Shulang had to lean forward slightly, which tugged at the pain in his chest. His upbringing wouldn't allow him to peer directly through the windshield to get a look inside, but he couldn't help worrying that the driver might have been hurt in the crash. Just as he raised his hand again, about to knock once more, the window slowly began to lower. A wave of warm air poured from the interior, mingling with the crisp morning breeze, coiling, clashing, then merging into one. As the car window descended, Shulang caught sight of a man's face. His first impression was that the man was strikingly handsome. The facial features of the man were sharp and deep-set, with clean and well-defined lines. The skin of his wasn't particularly fair, but the light wheat tone gave him an air of calm steadiness and good health. Shulang was slightly taken aback, not because of the man's unexpectedly superior appearance, but because of the sudden and disorienting sense of incongruity that arose in his heart. Having served in the position of office director for 4 years, Shulang prided himself on his ability to read faces and judge character. However, the man in front of him gave off a strangely contradictory first impression. He had a sharp, imposing face, but it was paired with a pair of gentle eyes. Fine bangs partially obscured the man's brows, and his deep-set eyes held a gentle warmth between them. The morning breeze lightly stirred his hair, the strands lifting naturally and smoothly with the wind, graceful and soft, like moonlight beneath a clear sky. This scene brought an involuntary phrase to Shulang's mind: "A breeze so pure, the moon so bright." At that moment, the man wore a light smile at the corners of his lips. His gaze was gentle and composed. His voice mild as he asked with easygoing humor, "We just went through a car accident together, right?" Only then did Shulang snap back to the moment, speaking with sincere apology. "I was distracted while driving and rear-ended your car. The fault is entirely mine. I'm very sorry." The man opened his door and stepped out, a trace of concern on his face. "Are you hurt?" His voice took Shulang by surprise. He wasn't short himself, but the man before him stood more than half a head taller. They were standing quite close. Shulang had approached the car just moments ago, and now, after the man got out, there was barely a fist width between them. The warmth radiating from the man's body brushed faintly against Shulang's skin, and though subtle, it made him feel oddly uncomfortable. Without drawing attention to it, he took a discreet half-step back, widening the space between them to a more socially proper distance. With polite courtesy, he replied, "I'm fine, thank you. Are you all right? If you feel any discomfort, I strongly recommend getting checked at the hospital." The man's expression remained gentle. I'm not hurt either. Then let's take a look at your car, Yu Shilong offered earnestly. Since I'm fully responsible for the rear end collision, I'll cover any and all damages. The car doesn't matter. As long as no one's hurt, that's what counts. There wasn't the slightest trace of annoyance on the man's face. On the contrary, he even spoke with surprising consideration. I just got back to the country and I'm not too familiar with how these traffic matters are handled here. Is there anything I should do to cooperate? Yu Shulang felt a subtle sense of relief. At least the man didn't seem like the unreasonable type. And recalling his own earlier misjudgment, his sense of guilt deepened. I'll need to contact traffic police and the insurance company. They'll handle fault assessment and evidence collection. It might take a bit of your time. The man nodded. That's all right. The scenery around here isn't bad anyway. Yu Shilong looked around. He had missed a road sign while taking a call and had veered off course onto a rural road. Now all around him were farmlands. There was nothing picturesque to speak of. His gaze returned to the man again, and in the depths of those eyes of the man, he caught a faint scattering of starlight. Yu Shilong lowered his eyes with a small smile and offered a sincere thank you. After making his call, Yu Shilong turned to deal with some work messages. He had cut his vacation short to return home for an emergency project advancement meeting. Since the early hours of the morning, he had been rushing non-stop, rushing to drive, to catch his flight, to beat the clock. And now, less than 15 kilometers from the office, an accident. At this point, it was clear he wouldn't make the meeting in time. The realization brought a twinge of frustration. Are you cold? The man's voice drifted over from a short distance away. Yu Shilang looked up and saw him approaching at an unhurried pace, having just enjoyed the scenery. Even as he walked along the dirt road of the countryside, the man's expression remained composed and gentle, untouched by weariness, as though the noise and clutter of the world never reached his eyes. Because he had been in such a rush, Yu Shulang hadn't changed clothes after his flight. He was still wearing a short-sleeved polo shirt, which in the early May morning wasn't exactly freezing, but it certainly wasn't warm either. He rubbed his exposed forearm lightly and replied in an even tone, I'm all right. Would you mind wearing my coat for a while? The man shrugged off his long black trench coat, letting it hang loosely over his arm as he waited for Yu Shulang's answer, gracious and gentlemanly, never overstepping. Seeing that the man was still dressed in thick layers underneath, Yu Shulang gave it a moment's thought before accepting the gesture. Then, thank you. My clothes are all in my suitcase. It really wouldn't be convenient to dig something out now. The man draped the coat over Yu Shulang's shoulders. It was long, so long it nearly brushed against the tops of his shoes, wrapping around his body completely. The moment the fabric settled over him, Yu Shulang regretted it. The coat still held the man's residual body heat, along with the faint woody perfume. The scenery impact was too much. It made him feel extremely uncomfortable. And yet, to hand it back now would seem overly self-conscious. Fan Xiao, the man extended his hand at that moment, smiling as he said, no need to keep calling me you so formally. It sounds way too awkward. Yu Shulang pushed down the strange feeling stirring in his heart and extended his hand in return, giving his name, Yu Shulang. Though it might seem a bit inappropriate to say this after the car accident, I'm still very glad to meet you. That warm, gentle smile returned to the man's face. His handshake subtly tightened. Meeting you makes me just as glad. The day was overcast, the sky shifting between light and shadow. At that moment, a break in the clouds let sunlight stream through, casting directly onto the man. The glint of the metallic pendant around his neck caught Yu Shulang's eyes, forcing him to squint slightly from the reflection. It's the four-faced Buddha, the man said, turning his body slightly to block the light. I grew up in Thailand. It's the god we worship there. As his eyes gradually adjusted, Yu Shulang got a clearer look at the pendant. It wasn't small in size, and it was somewhat different from the four-faced Buddha he had seen during his trip to Thailand. The expression on the Buddha's face did not seem compassionate. In fact, it appeared somewhat fierce. He tactfully looked away, smiling as he asked, looks like we must have been on the same flight back. Did you take a wrong turn too? Before the man could respond, Yu Shulang's phone began to ring. He glanced at the screen, a faint smile appearing in his eyes. Sorry, I need to take this call, he said politely. It was Lu Shen, Yu Shulang's lover. The young man on the other end of the phone had just woken up and was half complaining, half pouting about being left behind, while Yu Shulang flew to his home country early. Yu Shulang coaxed him with a good temper. His tone was gentle and patient, his voice soft with affection. So soothing, it left no room for blame. When Yu Shulang hung up the phone, the man who had tactfully stepped aside and now returned, smiled and asked teasingly, Girlfriend? You're very gentle, Mr. Yu. Yu Shulang neither confirmed nor denied, his gaze drifting toward the flashing police lights in the distance. They finally hear. Once all matters were settled, Yu Shulang and Fan Xiao exchanged contact information. Because of work urgency, Yu Shulang had to leave first. As his car pulled away, he glanced into the rearview mirror. Fan Xiao stood tall in the distance, holding the returned trench coat in the crook of his arm. His face was gentle, his smile warm, like a breeze brushing lightly across the cheek in spring. He fished a cigarette box out of his pocket. Long, strong fingers flicked one out, catching it between his teeth without lighting it. The expensive trench coat in his hand was tossed carelessly into the crop field beside him. His now freed hands brushed against each other, as if wiping away grime, like shaking off the filthy dust clinging to trash. He turned and leaned against the battered rear of the wrecked car. In the empty surroundings, the sound of phone buttons being pressed echoed, followed by the wind-like hum of a call attempting to connect, but it rang only once before the other party picked up swiftly. A low and languid voice rang out, its trailing end long and cold, devoid of warmth. License plate HU A68S57, white Audi. He crashed into me. Extent of damage? He lifted his arm. His luxury watch slid neatly down to his wrist. He made me lose 38 minutes and 42 seconds of my life. The sun suddenly broke free of the clouds, and the golden four-faced Buddha pendant gleamed brilliantly in the sunlight. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2. What if we can't save him? Dusk had fallen. The large office was steeped in darkness, not a single light turned on. Outside the window, neon lights flickered incessantly. The unrestrained beams cut into the room's shadowed interior, falling upon a wooden carving, its hands posed in the mudra of the formless, and cast a curvaceous, elongated shadow onto the opposite wall. In the dim glow, two men faced each other, one seated, one standing. An aged and angry voice rose from the one seated on the sofa. Do you even know where you are? This is China. It's not a place for you to do as you please. Don't you dare bring your foreign habits here. You were sent here to protect the third young master, not to challenge the law. The man who had been standing with his head lowered kept his feet shoulder-width apart, with both hands clasped in front of him, a textbook posture for receiving a reprimand. Sup? The man's voice was deep and firm. Speak Mandarin here. Do you hear me? Yes, Miss Zhu. His Mandarin sounded a little strange, like a tree branch snapped by an icy wind, brittle and rigid. Now leave. The door opened, then closed again. On the wall, the shadow of the formless Buddha hand shifted with the flickering neon lights, casting strange and dazzling patterns. Swish! The sound of a match striking cut through the silence. A sudden flare of flame leapt up, briefly illuminating a dark corner of the room. A man's face emerged momentarily from the shadows. He was sunk deep into a wide leather executive chair, pressing his brows together as he lit the cigarette between his fingers with a match. The match was lazily flicked out. Pale smoke curled upward in the dark room, and the man, now once again veiled in darkness, let out a soft chuckle. Uncle Zhu, next time you can just scold me directly. No need to go around in circles like this. The old man on the opposite sofa hurriedly lifted his body and came closer. As he passed by the window, his silhouette stretched unnaturally long, casting a grotesque shape onto the wall. Xiao, don't indulge the people under you too much just because they don't know better. Your father entrusted you to me, and I'm responsible for you. We are here to do business, making money, that's what matters most. A dark red glow traced a line through the darkness. With each breath, the man exhaled another puff of white smoke, slowly rising in the air. Uncle Zhu is right. Nothing's more important than making money. But Uncle Zhu, these kinds of lessons you can teach me directly. No need to go over my head and lecture my men. They wouldn't understand you anyway, would they? Silence fell across the room. After a long pause, a forced smile emerged from the other party. Yes, Xiao, as long as you understand. I heard from my father that Uncle Zhu's daughter is still receiving treatment in the hospital. Since I'm new here, it's only right that I pay her a visit. The man stubbed out the glowing red tip of his cigarette between his fingers. My secretary will arrange a time with you for the visit. It's getting late. I won't be seeing Uncle Zhu out. The sound of the door closing echoed again, plunging the room into complete silence. The man picked up a remote and pressed a button. Massive curtains slowly descended, cutting off the light from outside. Bit by bit, the shadows of hands, bearing countless joys, sorrows, and devotions, were slowly swallowed up by darkness. Hospitals are always a special existence in the heart of any city. These places, where joys and sorrows are contained in equal measure, carve out their presence sharply with the scent of disinfectant. After coming out of Uncle Zhu's daughter's ward, Fangio lingered in the hospital a while longer. His fingers idly stroked the Buddha pendant hanging on his chest as he silently observed the faces of the patients and their families, each one etched with raw, visible grief and anxiety. All beings suffer, and all phenomena are inherently empty. The Buddha pendant grew warm from being rubbed as he muttered to himself with a sneer. The last words had barely faded when, among the countless anxious, sorrowful faces in the hospital, Fang Shui caught sight of one that stood out, calm and composed. He looks familiar. What's his name again? You something? Fan Shui pulled out his phone and opened his contacts. Oh, you Shulang. What a hard name to remember. At that moment, the man with the surname Yu was patiently giving directions to an elderly woman whose face was blank with confusion. After several failed attempts to explain, he eventually chose to guide her in person. He walked her to the elevator and even pressed the floor button for her. When the elevator opens, the department you're looking for will be right in front of you. His smile wasn't wide, but it radiated trustworthiness. What a coincidence, Mr. Yu. We meet again. The elevator doors had just closed when Yu Shulang heard someone call his name. He turned in search of the voice, only to meet a pair of gentle eyes. After a brief moment of surprise, his smile deepened and he said, Mr. Fan, quite the coincidence indeed. Though he had already noticed Yu Shulang's arm injury, Fan Jiao still managed to show genuine concern when the man turned and revealed his left arm, supported in a sling across his chest. Could this be an injury you got from the rear-end collision last time? Yu Shulang gave a helpless smile. No, I don't know what's been going on lately. The car I just had repaired was parked by the roadside and got hit again. I happened to be getting out of the car at that time and hit my arm against the dashboard. It's a minor injury. The elevator heading downward opened just then, and the people surged out of the elevator cab. Fan Shio gently placed a hand on Yu Shulang's shoulder, subtly positioning himself so his body shielded his injured hand from the crowd. Once they reached a less crowded area of the corridor, Fan Shio asked, So you're here for a follow-up? Yu Shulang subtly pulled back a step to maintain comfortable distance before answering. Just a checkup. And you, Mr. Fan? I came to visit a patient. The inpatient department and outpatient department are connected, and somehow I ended up here. He joked slightly. What about you, Mr. Yu? Give me some pointers too. Guide me through this lost ferry crossing and tell me how to find my car in the parking lot. Being around Fangio was undeniably comfortable. Yu Shulang was someone who had always been a composed, well-mannered and thoughtful person, always thinking twice before speaking or doing anything. So encountering someone who was, if anything, even more modest and measured than himself naturally brought a sense of ease. Sure, but before he could finish, a wave of startled gasps rippled through the people around them. The crowd was looking up in unison. Yu Shulang and Fan Xiao followed their gazes, only to see a woman standing outside the glass barrier on the third floor, a thin child clutched tightly in her arms. This outpatient building of this hospital had 6 floors in total, with an open atrium design. That mother and child were on the third floor. Somehow she had already climbed over the waist high glass railing. At this moment, the woman who was holding her child with one hand and gripping the railing with the other, with only a 2-inch wide foothold beneath her feet. Her hands and feet were visibly trembling. Her entire body teetered on the edge. If she were to lose her grip or footing, the only thing that could catch her would be the cold, hard floor of the first floor. Shulang furrowed his brow slightly, pulling out his phone to dial the emergency number. Though anxious, he did not panic, calmly describing the situation inside the hospital with precise detail, even inquiring about the best course of action to take before the firefighters arrived. While Shulang was on the phone, Fang Xiao never looked away from the mother and the child. His eyes, as deep as an icy pond, seemed to be churning with countless emotions, so intricate and subtle that they were impossible to discern. Then they heard the woman scream, "Why is it my son who has to be sick? He is so young. Why does he have to suffer so much like this?" The woman's roar frightened the child in her arms, and the baby's sharp cry immediately rang out. The woman grew even more agitated. "All of you got to grow up healthy. Why can't he? Why only him? So you all deserve to die, every last one of you. If my son can't have health, none of you deserve it either." Security guards had begun to gather behind her, and one doctor in a white coat cautiously stepped forward, nervously trying to calm her down. "Ma'am, although your child has been diagnosed, there are ways to treat it. If he receives timely treatment." "Timely treatment? How much will that cost? Even if I work my whole life, I still won't be enough to pay for his medical expenses. I'm a housekeeper. Just look at my hands. See what they have become." In her agitation, the woman actually opened her arm that had been holding her child. However, without her grip to support him, the frail child abruptly began to slip downward from her embrace. Gasps and low cries of alarm rippled throughout the crowd. After seeing the woman finally catch the slipping child, everyone let out a long collective breath of relief. Fan Xiao, however, seemed to have grown tired of watching and turned his gaze to Yu Shulang instead. By now, the man had ended his call and was already shrugging off the coat that hung loosely around his shoulders. He began urging those nearby to take off the jackets too and stack them together. "Here, take mine." Fanjo handed over his own long coat as well. The subtle sheen of the fabric made it clear it was an expensive piece. Yu Shulang didn't say thank you, he simply nodded. Taking Fancho's extra large coat, he placed it at the very bottom of the pile. Then, raising his voice, he addressed the surrounding crowd. "The firefighters just said that before they arrive, if the child falls, we can use bed sheets or clothing to cushion the impact and slow the descent. But if the woman falls and we don't have something large and stable enough to catch her, we shouldn't attempt to rescue her, otherwise those beneath her could get seriously hurt." The man made a swift decision in a firm voice. "So let's focus on preparing to catch a child first before the firefighters arrive." He grabbed one corner of the layered clothing pile and with his uninjured hand handed it to Fanshawe. Fanshawe lowered his eyes slightly and looked at him. The man's eyes were calm, unflinching, devoid of unnecessary emotion. It was a stillness that conveyed a quiet strength and unwavering resolve. Fanshawe gave a slight nod and took the edge of the fabric from Yushulang's hand. "There are enough people helping. Since your hand is still injured, don't participate in it." His voice was low and steady. Indeed, several bystanders had already stepped in to assist, but Yu Shulang remained beside Fang Xiu, close to his body. With one hand gripping the corner of the cloth tightly, he gave a subtle shake of his head and said, "It's fine." This was the first time Yu Shulang had taken the initiative to stand so close to Fan Xiu. It was normal for two men standing close together to have some casual physical contact, nothing out of the ordinary. But because Yu Shulang had always deliberately or unintentionally avoided it before, this moment of contact now felt unexpectedly new and fresh to Fang Xiao. Since they had all taken off their coats, the warmth of their bodies permeated through their clothes. Shulong's body felt very warm and there was a faint lingering fragrance in his hair. Fang Xiao was very sensitive to scents. He sniffed lightly. It was the scent of wild roses. The man raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Yu Shulang wasn't exactly old, but he couldn't be called especially young either. He dressed in a low key and steady manner, leaning toward the style of a veteran caterer in China. And yet he favored the lush, seductive scent of wild roses, which was truly surprising. If we manage to save him today, I'd like to treat Mr. Fan to a simple meal tonight. Would you be willing to honor me with your presence? Yu Shilang said, but his eyes remained fixed on the mother and the child on the third floor. His tone was calm and courteous, the invitation slipping out as naturally as breath. Consider it a celebration and also an apology for the last incident. What if we can't save him? Fanchio's voice was low, airy, and carried a tone that was almost playful. The single hand gripping the edge of the cloth tightened slightly. Yu Shulang turned his head, his gaze slowly landing on Fanchio's face. That strange, dissonant feeling stirred in him once more. An impossible blend of contradiction that he couldn't quite name. But before he could dwell on it, the man beside him let out a light chuckle, his eyes carrying a tender warmth with a hint of mischief nestled deep within. I'm joking. There is no way Mr. Yu will be able to save any money tonight. End of chapter 2.